Welcome to TeamMark Tutorials. This tutorial is going to walk you through the basics of setting up your subjects, a roster, student alerts, and lastly, your essential learning. These tools are necessary to access any of the data tools within TeamMark. However, you can also use the subjects and essential learning tools alone without ever using the data tools, as they interface with the collaboration log. So the first step I'm going to do is enter my Subjects tab. Notice that the Subjects tab is found under the Teams tab. The team that we are viewing today is the data team, and you can see that this team has already established 3 subjects: their math subject, their reading subject, and their reading short frequent assessment first semester subject. You can create as many subjects as you like. I'm going to create a new subject, and this subject, just to demonstrate how creative you can get with this tool and the flexibility that it allows, I'm going to set this subject up as our character traits subject. Notice this is active boxes checked. With subjects, once there is data attached to a subject, you cannot actually delete the subject. However, you can mark it as inactive by unchecking that box. This will take that subject out of your collaboration log, and it will take that subject out of some of your data views. However, it is defaulted to be marked as is active. If you have not yet attached any data to a subject, you can delete that subject by using the delete X over in the Subjects tool. And then secondly, it's very important to note this message. You must create a roster for this subject. If you're going to use the data tools, you need to create a roster for every subject you create. So I've entered my subject name, character traits. I'm going to save that subject. You'll see that it is now added to my list of subjects. However, I need to create a roster for that subject if I'm planning on using the data tools. So to access rosters, I'm going to come up here to my Classes tab. I'm going to come over to my Roster tool, and I'm going to create a roster for Nancy Hoover. Now, the Roster tool is used in a couple of different ways. One way is at the elementary level. If teachers are sharing kids between classes for a certain subject, you can create a unique roster for that subject, and you can pull students into that roster from any other class in any other grade. At the secondary level, it's useful for if you have a first period or a second period in a different group of kids. You don't have to enter those kids manually for each of those classes. You can go in and you can create a roster for each of the periods that you teach simply by pulling students from other teachers' homeroom classes. So for Nancy Hoover, I'm going to work on the data team here, and the subject we're going to create a roster for, let's set one up for the character traits, the subject we just created. And you can see, because we just created that subject, there is no roster, so we're going to click New. I'm going to pull students into this roster from 2 classes. First of all, Nancy Hoover, teaching 5th grade, is going to take just about half of her class here, and we're going to put them on that roster. And then I'm also going to take some students from Andy Jenkins. Maybe this team, when they teach character traits, they mix their classes. So she has part of her students, and then we're going to take part of Mr. Jenkins' class here. And we're going to add them to that roster. And there I have 10 students in my roster. I'm going to save that roster. And now you can see that Nancy Hoover on the data team for the character traits has this roster created. I can remove students by clicking the Remove button. I can see what grade each of my students are in. I can see the teacher of that roster is Nancy Hoover. And then here's the homeroom teacher, so I can see where those students have actually come from. Student's name, and then this is also where we create alerts. Click on the alert icon, and all of the information you need to set up an alert is found in this window. You would mark a student as active. You would choose the frequency. This is how often that alert will appear in your collaboration log. This is all linked to your collaboration log. Once you've front-loaded and you've set this information up in rosters, it can be accessed very easily from your collaboration log. So I'm going to say that we want to be reminded about Case Boyd weekly. Here's where you can type notes along with directly from the collaboration log. I can type any notes in here about Case Boyd, and this would be relative to that character traits subject. Cancel out, don't have any notes. And this is also where you would attach documents. If you have an observation form that you had filled out, if you have progress monitoring data that you had compiled, if you have student work samples that you want to attach to this particular student alert, you can do it just simply by clicking that new document icon, and you can attach those documents to these formative notes for Case Boyd. That's our student here. And the subject is character traits. So we're going to save that, and you can see now that Case Boyd is on an alert. It's a weekly alert, and this would be for our character traits subject. So we'll see that information in our collaboration log. All right, that's a lot of information. Let's jump back to our Teams tab here, and I'm going to just check in on our Subjects tab so we can see that we have our character traits subject has been added, along with these others, math, reading, and the reading short frequent assessments first semester. So now to enter actual essential learning objectives for each of those subjects, we're going to go to the Essential Learning tab. Now just like in subjects, you can create as many essential learning objectives for any subject that you like. However, the subjects must be created first, because I come to this drop-down menu and now I choose my subject. Let me demonstrate very quickly here for you. If you're a returning user and you are using the archive feature, this is a really slick way to populate both your subjects and essential learning objectives. You can access previous year's information. So we'd go to the 2011-2012 school year. We would choose a subject that we had created last year. Maybe it's for our SMART goal. We have a SMART goal that we titled Inquiry. I'm going to select that subject, and you can see these are the essential learning objectives that we had selected for last year's SMART goal subject. I'm going to take all of those same learning objectives, I'm going to pull them over, and if I save that, what I now have, just with a few simple clicks, I have an entire subject and essential learning objectives created. Here is my SMART goal for inquiry. Click on that as my subject, and there are my essential learning objectives. Let me talk very briefly about the assessment date. This information is integrated with your collaboration log, and it is time sensitive. So when we're in our collaboration log, we're going to be able to view these subjects based on these dates. You can edit those dates if you need to by clicking Edit. And here you can change the date. So you'd want to update that for your new school year. You can enter any notes or reminders. You can remind yourselves of resources or strategies that you'd use that were helpful. You can use that notes box. I'm going to cancel out of there. Let's go back up to our character trait subject that we just created, and I'll show you just how simple it is to add a new objective. I'm going to click New Objective. Maybe the first character trait that our team or our school has chosen to focus on was kindness. And our school has decided that on March 8th, we're going to have some type of assessment of that character trait. And this is a reminder, assembly after school on 3/8. And there you have it. That learning objective is entered in the program and saved for you. I also want to demonstrate here. Here's math. Let's do a new objective for math. I had just copied a learning objective from the Common Core. I can just paste that right in there. Let's say our assessment date for that objective is going to be March 15th. We don't have to type any notes, so we'll just save that. So now we have 2 learning objectives for math. These are tools that you want to work for very intentionally with your team. You'll want to do some front loading and planning ahead of time to see how you want to map them out. If you ever have any questions about how to set these tools up or just to brainstorm different ways to do so, always contact your TeamMark consultant and they will be happy to talk that through with you. That pretty much sums up some of the most important aspects of using the subjects and essential learning tools. Again, a reminder, if you're planning on using these tools for data, you have to create that roster for your subject before you can actually attach data to any students. It is important also that you start recognizing how these tools interact with your collaboration log. If you watch the collaboration log tutorial, you'll see how those tools interact. But for now, we're going to leave it at that. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact your TeamMark coach. And until next time, happy collaborating.